and gentlemen, friends from the media, my dear colleagues, and all of the distinguished people who have gathered here this evening. I welcome you to the 16th Annual Awards by the Press Institute of India and the International Committee of the Red Cross for Best Article and Photograph on a Humanitarian Subject. As you know, the theme for this year is covering climate change, humanitarian crisis in focus. Let me start by welcoming on stage Ms. Deepali Gaur, Head of Humanitarian and Legal Affairs at the Regional Delegation of the ICRC in New Delhi. I request her to felicitate our distinguished guests here this evening with a small token of gesture. Deepali, please. We start with our special guest this evening, Mr. R. Prasannan, Resident Editor of the Week. Next, we welcome our first member of the jury for this year, Ms. Usha Rai, Senior Journalist. Mr. Dinesh Sharma, Senior Journalist and Author. Ms. Naga Mallika Gudipati, Professor, Department of Communications, the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. And finally, of course, our partner, Mr. Shashi Nair, Director, Press Institute of India, Chennai. Yes. Thank you so much. That's the host. Yeah. If I could request Shashi, please, to welcome Mr. Kedil Omar, Head of the Regional Delegation for India, Nepal, Bhutan, and the Maldives.
All right, good evening. This was unexpected, but... Yeah. All right, yeah, okay. But anyway, I must say it's a pleasure meeting you this evening. First of all, we haven't met, so that's wonderful. And it's also wonderful that we've taken this association, running for 16 years. So this is something special. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. With this, I request Kadir for his inaugural address. Thank you.
Dear Mr. Prasannan, Resident Editor of the Week, the special guest of this evening, member of the jury, Mrs. Usha Rai, Senior Journalist, Mr. Dinesh C. Sharma, Senior Journalist and Author, Mr. Naga Malik Gudipati, Professor Communication, the English and Foreign Language University of Hyderabad, our partner, Mrs. Shashi Nair, Director, Press Institute of India, Chennai, our colleague from ALCO, Your Excellency, the member of media fraternity, the journalist, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. On behalf of the Regional Delegation of the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC, I am pleased to welcome you to this year's annual award for Best Articles, Photographs on Humanitarian Subject in Covering Climate Change, Humanitarian Crisis in Focus. With this award, the ICRC and the Press Institute of India have recognized and honored India media professionals who have painstakingly documented the story of humanitarian concern for almost 16 years. The ongoing partnership between the ICRC and the PII marks the milestone in our effort to support journalists across the country for their invaluable contribution of humanity. These journalists and photographers have gone the extra mile to cover unreported stories and often put themselves at risk to reach out the communities that need to be heard. The awards are a small token of appreciation for their dedication to keeping people in need at the center of their work. We thank every journalist present at the ground, as the ground zero for their unwavering commitment to putting the spotlight of humanity's challenge. As you know very well, climate change and global warming threaten millions of people's lives and livelihood. The recently held COP27 climate summit in Egypt underlines that human lives are at the center of these disasters, and humanitarian efforts comprise an important part of the response of the climate crisis. There has never been more urgency to discuss the impact of climate change. This important event today culminates the need to highlight the implication of climate change through the story of journalists. The media is essential in helping communities that are worst hit. Thus, climate journalists like some of you in the room, serving as public overseers, join forces with environmental scientists and activists to raise awareness, advocate for solutions, and find ways to overcome the climate crisis. Your media stories also give direction to organizations like ours. There is no doubt that climate change is intensifying humanitarian crisis, and humanitarian action needs to adapt to meet this challenge. In the face of this climate crisis, members of the movement have made tremendous effort in addressing climate change. For instance, the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, PII-ICRC, has launched a global climate resilience program. It is an ambitious multi-year program to scale up locally led climate smart disaster risk reduction and adaptation efforts. The ICRC has long worked to protect the lives of and dignity of victims of armed conflicts and help these communities to rebuild after conflict. As a result, the ICRC has primarily considered the environment through the lens of international humanitarian law. Our recent reports, When Rain Turns to Dust, on the interplay between climate change and conflicts, look at how people deal with combination of conflict and climate risk and how they adapt. It discusses how the ICRC and the humanitarian sector in general will have to adjust to address the risks and makes urgent call for strengthening climate action in countries affected by conflict. The regional delegation of the ICRC in New Delhi has been supporting the National Red Cross and Red Crescent Society in India, Bhutan, the Maldives, Nepal, with the capacity building initiatives, including effects of climate change. The support process continues, and we all need to help those affected by impact of climate change, especially the most vulnerable communities living in far-flung zones or areas of violence disturbance where access is difficult. Here too, the media plays an important role. Your work greatly contributes to informing those in need and those making decisions. It ultimately plays a vital role in alleviating the challenge faced by population affected by humanitarian emergencies. Thank you for bringing stories of humanitarian interest to the forefront. Finally, I would like to congratulate all participants and winners of this competition, and thank our long-standing partner, the Press Institute of India, for their unwavering support. We look forward to sustaining this partnership and rewarding and acknowledging the exceptional work done by the media. I also thank the PII and ICRC colleagues for their hard work and efforts in successfully organizing this beautiful event this evening. With that, I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your presence today.
Thank you so much, Kadir. Now I invite Mr. Prasannan, Resident Editor of the Week, for the special guest address this evening. Please, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Shashi Nair, Mr. Omar, I'll shorten that name, Professor Nagamalika, my senior friends Usha Rai and Dinesh Sharma, friends from the media and from colleagues and from ICRC and Press Institute of India, friends, ladies and gentlemen. The great European statesman Prince Metternich once said, "When France sneezes, Europe catches a cold. That was when any incident in the streets of Paris, even a street riot, sent shivers across the royal house of Europe. We in Delhi have a similar saying. We used to say, when it snows in Shimla, Delhi catches a cold. Those were the days when people decided to whether sweat or shiver during the day after reading the weather column in the morning newspaper. Any report about snowfall in Shimla would make us reach for our jackets, ties, shawls, mufflers and all that. And talking about the weather was also a polite way of starting a conversation, and also an artful way of attracting attention to one's own clothes. Somebody would say, well, pretty cold, isn't it? Yes, but you are protected by a good, nice shawl. Well, I got it from Paris last week. So like that. That's the way Delhi used to be. But these days, we are cruder. To break the social ice, we don't talk about the weather. We talk about the foul air. We don't gauge the day in Fahrenheit or centigrade now. We do it in terms of suspended particulate matter or air quality index. We are crueler also. Just like we blame Shimla for the cold, now we blame Haryana and Punjab for the stink and the smog here. We say the farmers there who burn their autumn harvest stubble, they are fouling up the air. We actually run more cars and scooters on our grand avenues here than all the cars and scooters of Mumbai, Chennai and Kolkata put together. We emit more SPM, suspended particulate matter, than at least two of the other two metros put together. We have India's largest and best metro network, but you look at the roads here, there are more of us driving to work than even in New York. Our buses run empty, but our roads are clogged with cars. And when the air gets foul, we blame our neighbors, Punjab, Haryana and all. But I leave it at that because somebody could be from here and thinks that I should be rewarded with a shoe. No, thank you. I'll stick to weather. It's early winter here and the weather here is very pleasant. This is the time when we have weddings, we have conferences, conclaves and functions like this. But sitting here, we forget that the weather is actually getting violent and foul these days. I read a report the other day that India witnessed extreme weather events on 241 of the 273 days between January and September this year. There have been heat waves, there have been cold waves, cyclones, lightning, heavy rainfall, floods, landslides in different parts of the country throughout this year. Though we use the term extreme weather events for these phenomena, these are actually climate events. Weather is only a short-term manifestation of the change that climate makes on the atmosphere. But I shall leave those terminological issues to climatologists and linguists. Where do we come in? The media. We report this. We highlight the plight of those who suffered. Our reports raise questions about poor urban planning, as it happened in Bangalore. We know all that recently. We scrutinize the response and relief that comes from the government. We provide the information that people are seeking when these things happen. But that's only half the job done. Climate change and its impact go beyond all these events. These events are only a few visible symptoms of the disease. Beyond these symptoms, climate change is a gradual deterioration of all the organs of the body. The body here is nature. Not all of it causes immediate uneasiness or discomfort in the form of heat wave, cold wave, cyclones or flash floods. And that's where we climate journalists come in. Beyond the immediate interest of the reader, climate journalists have a duty to inform and educate the public about the larger malaise that strikes when these things happen. Here I want to clarify what I mean by climate journalist. There is a distinction between a climate academic, an environment policymaker, and a climate or environment journalist. The academic or the scientist observes and studies the meteorological trends and their impact and produces papers about their studies. The policymaker uses those studies to chalk out plans to tackle the problem and come out with actionable programs. So what do we journalists do, particularly climate journalists? We communicate all these to our readers and viewers. Delhi has been witnessing morning smog for the last several years now. But it wasn't until the charts and graphs in red, orange, and yellow shades indicating the air quality that began to be published in newspapers and flashed on TV screens that it became the most common topic of discussion among Delhi people. Newer generations are often credited with being more environment conscious than the previous. Is it true? I have my doubt, because when I leave a room, I switch off the light. My daughter, who is here, who is supposedly more environment conscious, forgets. Well, I won't leave the domestic issues here. Not because they are more environment conscious because they are reading, not because they are reading more studies made by climate scientists or reports prepared by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It is because we journalists write about these studies and findings. Here I want to comment on a different point. I'm not going to tell you what to report and where to source information. Perhaps you know all that better than I, because I have not been much of a climate journalist. But there is one area that we have to be careful about. That's about the manner in which we communicate. Our core competency is in an ability that we have to present facts, opinions, and arguments in simple, easy to understand, and reader-friendly formats. We are generalists, not experts. We have to communicate in the language of the layman, the reader, not in the language of the expert. Our job is to engage the readers, the viewers, and cultivate an interest in the subject about which we are writing. That is one flaw I often find in our reporting, especially in the recent years. We too have started talking. We means the media also started talking the language of the expert. Many of us use the terminology of the expert. The moment we do that, the purpose is defeated, friends. If you talk the language of the expert, why should the reader or viewer be reading or listening to us? The viewer or the reader can straight away download the expert report and read it. Our job is different. We have to interpret it. We have to explain that in the simple language of the layman. Our job is to simplify and interpret, and also to bring in the human touch to reporting, the human element we can bring in. And that is something the expert does not do. The impact that a flood or a cloudburst or a landslide or a rise in the sea level would have on humans is not uniform, even within an affected area. It impacts differently on different classes, on different castes, and even genders. In their exposure to the adverse effects of climate change, in their susceptibility to the damage caused by it, and in their ability to cope with it and recover from it, the disadvantaged people or groups are more disadvantaged than the rest of them. In simpler journalistic language, the poor suffer more when climate disasters strike. Girl children suffer more from malnutrition than do their brothers. Poor countries suffer more than rich countries. Within communities, the poor and the shelterless are at greater risks. We saw that during the pandemic. When you and I worked from homes, our own home, or many of us drove back to our village homes and worked from there, our maids, our drivers, our cooks, our guards, and all had to walk hundreds of miles to migrate back to their villages. We saw that. Covering this humanitarian crisis and the inequalities rising from it is the most significant role of the journalist. And here I would even dare to give you, if I may, especially to my younger colleagues and younger reporters here, some tips about the style and manner in which you and we should report. For God's sake, my friends, don't write about people below the poverty line. Write about the poor. For God's sake, don't write about unemployed people. Write about jobless people. Please don't write about shelterless people. Write about the homeless. Don't write about infant mortality. Any bureaucrat will tell you infant mortality. Please don't write about it. Write about baby deaths. That is what evokes feelings in people. We have to use that language, not the language of the bureaucrat, not the language of the planner, not the language of even the politician. And the other thing, don't report from rural areas. Never go to rural areas. Go to the villages. Remember, the greatest communicator of India, the greatest communicator who India ever had, said, India lives in its villages. He didn't say India lives in the rural areas. Mahatma Gandhi. Scientists and policymakers would give you the number of the displaced, the dead, the injured, the malnourished, etc. but it's the human stories of the homeless, the poor, the starving that induce emotion among the readers, the viewers, and the masses. It is these human stories which tell the reader or the viewer that it is not a problem only of future generations, but it's a problem that is existing, or it's an existing threat. That's the power that we wield in our pens or keyboards. Use that power for making people more aware. Talk in their language, write in their language, make more people aware. Thank you, and wish you all a very happy New Year in advance, and my congratulations to today's winners. I am yet to know who they are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prasannan. We will now play a small video clip to highlight the continuing legacy of the PII-ICRC Awards. Over to you.
Time we had the program. I don't remember whether it was in Chennai or in Delhi, but the last program in Delhi didn't have such a full house. So it's really good to see all of you here, and I must thank all of you for coming here. You know, the award winners and the others who've shown interest to come here. I know it's very difficult getting through Delhi traffic in the evenings. You've made it. So thank you all very much. And so we'll make this short actually, because you know, Mr. Prasannan has traversed such a you know, long distance. I always knew him as a national security and foreign policy expert. In fact, I think his postgraduate studies was in was in national security, etc. I mean defense studies. I've been a regular reader of his column, the PMO Beat. I don't know how many of you read it, but the way he you know, is able to bring humor and wit to what he writes and makes it, as he said, it's also simple, so that there is that connection immediately. I think you've said it all, and you've stolen my script. So thank you very much. I'm very happy you came today, and you readily agreed to be here as the special guest. So thank you so much. We'll make this short, Usha, Dinesh and Malika. The first question obviously is, I don't know the number of entries, but certainly around 80 or so. And most of them were top-notch entries, both articles and pictures. Yes. Can you quickly run us through what you felt as you were judging them or reading them, or the pictures, both articles and pictures? Starting with you, Usha.
Okay, the articles were a wide range of articles. there were more articles from the south. I think it's also because of the intense floods in Kerala, Chennai, Bangalore, all these areas. But there were also some excellent entries on the impact of climate change on crops, whether it was from Kashmir or Osmanabad or other places. Kerala, the loss of pepper. Entire communities have been wiped out from what they were doing or have completely lost their livelihoods. There was also it became a little difficult for us to actually select, because the quality this year was very, very good. There was one article from the Sundarbans also, which I remember, which was extremely good. And Sundarbans, as you know, is very fragile, a little island, and it's one of those islands that could just get drowned out any time, the Sundarbans and all the coastal areas of Orissa from which Aishwarya comes. Aishwarya's story was really very, very different and very heartwarming. She talked about the impact of climate change on women who are forced to live in the earthquake shelters during the earthquakes, during the floods, and the lack of sanitary pads, any kind of proper toilets, and the impact that's had on the health of women. That was completely offbeat. It's not the normal kind of things that one thinks of. So it was really a very, very good article, and I think it was a unanimous decision to give her the award. The others were also excellent. Dinesh, would you like to chip in?
No, I fully second what Usha has said, because the range of topics to be covered, and also it was a theme that the humanitarian crisis you have to keep in focus. And as Prasannan has already elaborated, why it is important to bring in the human element. Because, fortunately I've been covering this area since 1992, the Earth Summit, that was the first one which I had covered. This whole discourse, public discourse, is camouflaged in jargon. And as he rightly said that, a lot of jargon is being used by journalists. Here so many people are sitting. If I ask you one story which you remember from the COP which just ended, will anybody be able to recall? No, because it was all couched in the officialese and the jargon and the negotiations. And the effort should be to bring out the human element. And that's where I think awards like this really play an important role. And as I see, climate change is a difficult story to cover, because it's not something very obvious for journalists. And of course, over the years, people have developed interest, people have developed skills and expertise to write on this subject, because it is, first of all, multifarious. Then you have to, it all starts with science, then policy, and the community. So an ideal climate change story I would say, would include elements of all these. And of course, for a subject to be understood and for people to really connect with the climate change story, you have to humanize it. You have to put a human face. And I think that's where the entries which came for this competition were really nice. And as we were discussing with Mr. Omar, that, India is not one country, it is several countries, 33 countries, so to say. So we need more such awards. Of course, a lot of entries came from South, but yes, we need more such entries, because it's a phenomenon. Because gone are the days when climate change people thought had something to do with either the glaciers or the sea level rise in the south. It had nothing to do with people all over. But fortunately, that understanding has changed, and that people are covering it as a subject in most of the country. But yeah, we need more sensitization so that and awards like these are quite encouraging, so to say.
What's your take on the awards?
Yeah, I think it's more or less we had unanimous decisions on most of the articles. But as ma'am was saying, most of them are from the south. Maybe it's because people from the north did not submit on time, or they were not covering, we are not sure. But it was also interesting to note that majority of the articles were from online media. Mainstream media, we just had a few, I think 2 or 3 papers, that's it. But the rest of it were online media, which also shows that there is less space being gradually given to such serious issues in the mainstream media. And that, I think, is where there's a lot of difference in the way things are being handled. And unfortunately, most of the journalism or journalistic stories tend to be event-oriented. And that, of course, makes news. But then when what Sir was talking about, giving the policies or the story behind it or the background gets lost in that, when we are trying to look at only the events per se. So I think, but then it was a fantastic number of stories we saw, and unlike the jargon, which we did not see much actually, it was very readable. Most of the stories were readable, and it was very heartwarming to see such good stories.
Thanks. So, Dinesh, you're talking about the Reader's Digest formula. I think what Mr. Prasannan is saying, that the Reader's Digest formula is also about bringing the human interest in front, to humanize the story. Usha, you've spent so many years in journalism. I think 50 odd years in journalism is, something remarkable. I know you've, during your, if I might say prime or whatever, I mean, during those years, you focused a lot on social development issues, including education and
environment also.
Environment, yes, of course, and health, and women empowerment, etc. And what's been your impression when you look back at those years when there wasn't any Google and climate change wasn't really talked about as it is being talked about today? Where the environment, like Mr. Prasannan said, it was, like Simla in Delhi, it was all you could breathe fresh air. And how do you see, the reports being generated now with the climate change? Is it because it's become an issue that we have more reporters writing about it? Or does it still not, is it still not a part of the mainstream media? Because always the impression is that, the news desk decides what is, takes prime space or time, and environment is sometimes relegated to the science reporter or environment reporter. Have you seen a change in recent years, or is it still the same?
No, there's been a lot of change in reporting. Let me tell you that there was no talk of climate change when I was covering environment. At that time, the ministry was also Ministry for Environment and Forests. It was not Ministry for Environment, Forests and Climate Change. But a lot of us, as people who are interested in writing on environmental issues, I covered the first conference on sustainable development. What is sustainable? That's again a jargon, Prasanna. I said to me, no, development can't be sustainable. But that was the word coined by the Brundtland Commission, and I was there at that time. So the result is that all of us journalists are sort of, we've been sort of slowly maneuvered into understanding what environment is all about. And same thing with me. I started covering Delhi Zoo, in fact, and that's where I learnt about wildlife and environment, then attended a conference on eucalyptus, the damage it can cause to the groundwater. So that's how all of us have done, but climate change was not there. But I must tell you this, that I was in the Indian Express, and the Indian Express was the first, I was covering environment and doing a development page for them. And we were the first paper to introduce in the 90s a small front page thing on pollution levels in Delhi. It was just this much, but every day I would call up the pollution control room and ask them, please send us the report. And a small thing, that's how we started, So there's been this build-up over the years. There is a lot of reporting on climate change, but the reporting is when there is an event, when there are floods, when there are earthquakes. But what is sad is that we are not learning from all the disasters that have been happening over the years. For example, especially on the hills, the construction that is happening on the hillsides, which should not happen, the huge roads, fast roads that are they are ruining our environment and are as responsible for climate change as the cutting of forests. So there has been reporting, but it's more event-based. So you'll see a lot of them at the time that when there is a disaster. And I suppose that is the way
Yeah.
how it is for newspapers. But there are, papers like the Scroll, the Print, and others who do a lot of background, giving you a lot of background information also. Even the Indian Express, that explained, they have that whole column, no? So it gives you a good sense of what is happening.
Do they still have it?
Explained, yes,
Yes,
Indian
they
Express
have.
has.
But that small column has disappeared, which you were talking about in those years.
The front
Yeah?
thing, no, that
That's
has
not there.
disappeared. That has disappeared.
That has disappeared.
Yeah,
Okay.
that has disappeared. Yeah.
Taking off on your point about, so, covering events when, providing coverage when events happen. For example, if it's mental health, you talk about mental health when you observe Mental Health Day. It's similar, right? So COP27 is happening, so you report, you send journalists.
Also, when Deepika tells the world that I have suffered from mental, that becomes a good peg for a story.
Yeah, of course. That's the celebrity thing.
Yeah.
But how would you encourage journalists, and this question is also to Dinesh because he's also traveled a lot. I think you've done a lot of traveling covering all these COP kind of events, right? So in the earlier years, I don't know how it was. But but Usha, remaining with you, what is your, how would you encourage journalists, or how would you advise journalists to, search for issues to write about climate? So it needn't be, climate specific as such, but you could write probably about even food or, something else, and yet bring the climate factor in.
Yeah.
Is it possible about people's lives, ordinary people's lives, etc.?
Yes. The impact on agriculture was very evident in the articles that we read. For example, the second prize winner from Osmanabad, who did the article for Pari, he did a wonderful job.
You're leaking the information before the awards. This is the second time you're doing it.
Oh,
yeah. No, you're not supposed to.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You're not supposed to. Sorry, don't even, just forget what she said.
I take it back. I take it all back. You must all read the articles then.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
So yes, somebody has to lead them. The other interesting thing that I noticed when I was going through the various reports that were sent in was a lot of people are now getting help, certain funding to travel and write. I think quite a few people who applied for this fellowship, for this award, had got assistance to travel and write. And that is the biggest challenge. And I find that more and more doors are opening for people to apply for travel grants to write articles if they sell it to the right people.
Okay. All right. Dinesh, you want to add something?
No, I think it's very important that how we treat this beat of climate change in newsrooms. Prasanna would agree with me because it's a relatively new beat. I don't think very many climate reporters are there. Either you're an environment reporter, either you're covering energy, or you're covering diplomacy and also writing on climate change. Or if you're a science reporter, you're certainly writing on climate change. So it's a new beat. So that kind of encouragement has to come from newspapers, the media houses, so to say, or all the media outlets, because see, it's not something which you can do sitting in the office. For certainly, if you're trying to talk about communities, if you're trying to talk about how people are coping with the changes which are occurring on the ground, we need to travel, and that's where travel grants and fellowships and awards come in handy. But I would like to see more action from the media houses themselves, because if you can afford a full team to cover stock markets or Bollywood or even any other beats, why not do that for climate change? Because and you need to develop that skill. It's a beat that covers almost a dozen subjects, from water to livelihoods to health to diplomacy to energy bonds and all kinds of things. You need to understand the market. So we need to develop that expertise. And I'm not saying that it is not happening. It is happening. So there needs to be some kind of institutional support in terms of workshops, sensitization, and it's a subject which is constantly evolving. It's not something.
So you're saying that there is a bit of lack of, if I might call it, climate literacy in newsrooms?
No, not literacy. I think we need enlightened editors,
or more
like
knowledge.
So to say.
Okay.
We need leadership in the editorial body. I mean, suppose I have to decide 10 stories for the day. I need to really look at what, if climate change is also important a subject enough to be discussed. And things these days are being led by the so-called media agenda is being led by social media or even television. So, I mean, the whole media dynamics is changing. So we have to put this climate change into the discourse somewhere. And it is happening in part, like the digital outlets are doing much better than newspapers, I would say, in certain aspects. So, because long form of journalism is there. Newspapers have a limitation of 500 or 700 word story, but whereas on a digital platform you can write 3,000 words, but they need support, and constant, updation of their skills and sensitization towards new subjects, new areas of climate change that are emerging. So that's where I think some kind of hand-holding, fellowships, training, all that is required.
Mallika, now you've been, associated with journalism, teaching journalism and communication. Communication is also a very important tool in today's world. It's not just journalism. The way you communicate, whether it's talking or like Mr. Prasanan said, presenting a story is key, because it's all about simplicity, brevity, clarity and all, which we've learned but we never practice. And also dignity, because a lot of journalists just write what they want without even looking at the tone and tenor of the language, etc. Since you're teaching students, journalism students, communication students, what's been your feel about the interest they show in, understanding these issues? I'm again referring to climate, environment, etc.
That's giving away my secret. I think most of the students today unfortunately have access to internet. Why I say unfortunately is that makes them go the easy way. Mr. Prasannan, as you were saying, why don't we use the simpler words? Because we download it from the net. So we get the same words, and then it's so much easy. We don't need to do any background work. We don't need to talk to people. We get it straight from there and we use it. And that is one of the main reasons how language is differing, and we get those very jargonized language, which journalists, everybody finds it so much easier today to do that. And that is where I think, in a way, the industry and academic institutions should work together. Maybe it can be a kind of a symbiotic relationship where both can learn from each other, but the distance is so much now that we really don't know what is happening in the industry, and industry people don't really know what's happening in the academia. So I think learning how to write and training how to write and training how to read and listen, I think these are the main things which we have to incorporate, and maybe we have to have this kind of a curriculum also, which we need to upgrade to include all these things, because a lot of education needs to be imparted to everyone, not just the students but also to the journalists, because things are changing so fast, and I think periodically they all need to go through that training.
Yeah. Dinesh, you want to add anything, or I'll just ask a general question? Quickly.
Second. It is not just the Google and internet. Now there is AI also. There are ready-made tools which can make your writing so simple. So we have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah. Now with fake news, etc., misinformation, etc., been there for a long while. Generally, surveys have shown here in India, abroad also, that people don't trust news as such, not like they did before, even if it is in a newspaper or magazine, because they are a little skeptical, not little. But when it's something to do with things like climate change, etc., which is it's a major issue. It seems some surveys have showed that readers tend to trust reports even less than the normal reports, and they want journalists to try and provide some sort of guidance and solutions as well. That's what the surveys have shown. Do you think it's possible?
Could you repeat that? I didn't get it.
Journalists should also offer solutions and guidance, which means they must research well, and the trustworthy or the credible bar should be very high for readers to trust. So there is a big trust deficit while reporters are doing these stories.
I think today, unfortunately, there is a lack of credibility amongst the people regarding the journalists, and I I don't know why. Maybe it's because of social media. Too much of social media.
No, Usha, how do you bridge this gap? I mean, how do you bring credibility when you're discussing serious issues? Climate change is a serious issue.
No, so as far as climate change goes, I don't think you can have fake news. You can't say there have been no floods, or you can't say that a hillside has not been
No, I'm
lost,
not saying it's fake. I'm saying in the background of fake news, the trust bar is low now for these issues.
The chances for fake news when covering climate change and actual events is very little. You have to, because the event is so large, it's in your face. Whether it's in agriculture or whether it is in the level of poverty, what's happening to people living in the poorer areas, they're getting poorer. But the thing is to look at it with that lens very carefully, and how many people will actually travel down to the villages and see the impact of a flood or an earthquake on people living in a particular village in the coast. That's the problem.
No, but I think I've seen a lot of fake messages on social media where they talk about, this house is getting washed away and bridges, and all that is fake news. They get it from some other place and then they plant it and say that it is happening in social media a lot. Yes.
Can I add?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
No, actually it's a very big issue. The climate deniers are very active on social media, and they are getting into the mainstream. Recently, one of the pink papers, the business papers, had a lead article by a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Council, along with a known think tank which is a denier of climate change. The two wrote an article on edit page of a business paper questioning climate change. They particularly questioned a report which had come out, international report, about the deaths which are going to be caused by heat, the rising climate, rising temperatures, and there was a projection. So they questioned that. So the deniers are getting mainstream. I think that's a very big worry for climate change. So as far as media is concerned, there are two roles. One, we have to be authentic in what we are saying, not only authentic, but also convincing the way we are going to communicate a climate story, and all the things which we say apply, that dejargonizing, humanizing, so that, and also providing solutions in the sense giving, not only just talking about the problem. People may be fed up of listening to the problem. Exactly. They want solutions. So we need to do all that, and also at the same time we have to combat misinformation. There's a whole industry which is there just to deny climate change. They are saying that floods are happening not because of climate change but for something else. They are very serious. It's a big problem, especially in West, and it's also come to India now. So we have to be careful.
Vested interests, no?
Yeah, these are vested interests. This could be a fossil lobby. No, these are also ideologically driven. There are a lot of people, just as they're opposed to, say, IVF, or opposed to many other GM crops, they are also opposed to climate change. There are ideologically driven groups, not only just vested interests. So they are all coming together, and it is becoming a big problem, actually.
One of the ways to, I think, maintain credibility is also to maintain some, I think, a rapport with people who talk sense, isn't it, for journalists? I mean, rapport with people of credibility, because that's important. That's where the credibility and goodwill thing comes. So I think for journalists, you need to kind of, always check your sources or whatever. I think I'll end this because they must be waiting. Is it? I'm sorry. Okay. Sometimes you get into discussions like this and it goes on and on. But whatever it is, my 2 bits, of course, I think it was the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He said that we are fighting and we are losing the battle, and we are on the way to on the way to climate hell, and our foot is on the accelerator. So maybe that's going a little bit over the top, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe he's right. So we have to be careful. So there are stories for journalists to do. And I think this is a good time to be in journalism, as it has always been, especially so now. I sometimes wish I was far younger and I could, and I had the money and people send me out and I would be let into on the ground to do stories. So trust in yourself. I think that's very important. You have to have faith in yourself and say, look, I can get this done. So whether you have to study hard, whether you have to research, and you have to research because knowledge is key, but you can go and get it done. Then you must cultivate the habit of doing legwork. Like somebody said, no Googling and all. Googling, yes, Googling is just a tool to aid you. But you must be there on the field. You know, legwork is prime. You have to meet people. You have to attend rallies or meetings. And you start at the local level. Go and meet the councillor. Go and meet the local MLA. See what's happening in your area where you reside. There are stories to be told. So it's not so bad, and there are people willing to talk. And you have to be their voice, whether it is through articles or through pictures. We can only help you and motivate you, but you have to do the hard work. Remember that. All right? So thank you all very much for being patient. And Rohan, I think it's over to you and the ICRC team to declare the winners. All right? We'll wait. But we haven't heard what she said. Thank you. No.
Thank you so much, everyone, Shashi, for this riveting and timely conversation. And indeed, the moment we have all been waiting for has finally arrived. I request Ms. Deepali Gaur to come on stage and declare the winners of the PII-ICRC Awards.
Should we? Shashi, if I may, on behalf of PII and as well as the ICRC, I think we need to thank the jury for the job that they had on their hands. And it's all on account of the excellent entries that we received. They were multi-layered, complex, with nuances. That was also an incredible learning process for us. So this is something that it's a journey we are doing alongside with you as well. So thank you so much for all the entries that came, and I say it for both the categories as well. And of course, let's not be in the way of the announcements. So I'll start with the second prize in the best article category, which goes to Parth Meena Nikhil, freelance journalist, for his article in Osmanabad, Crop Insurance, No Assurance, for the People's Archive of Rural India. May I request Ms. Usha Rai to hand over the trophy, please.
Say a word about his story.
Hi, thank you. I didn't know I would have to speak, otherwise I would have prepared something, but I'll give it a shot. This was a story from Marathwada about crop insurance and how climate change is, how crop insurance is important in times of climate change where everything's sort of getting uncertain for farmers. And this story basically looked at the unpredictable weather, and at the same time how Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana has failed to sort of provide that security to the farmers. And through the story I found out that the farmers had paid like a lot of money to Bajaj Allianz, the crop insurance company empaneled with the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, and it ended up they didn't end up getting any returns through the crop insurance when the floods ruined their harvest. And it was Bajaj Allianz who retained like 500 crores or something like that. So that was a story that connected climate change with crop insurance. And would like to thank Vinuta Malya, who edited the copy. This was a complex piece that I worked on, and of course Sainath, who's been a great mentor for us at PARI. And yeah, just glad to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you to the juries.
So we'll move to the third prize. Sorry for that mix-up. The third prize in the best article category goes to Mridula Chari, freelance journalist, for her article, Battered by Climate Change, Central India's Forest Products Are Disappearing, for Scroll. May I request Mr. Dinesh Sharma to hand over the prize, please.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Mridula, maybe a few words from you.
Thank you. Thank you for this prize award. So my article was about non-timber forest products in central India and how they are slowly disappearing over time because of the profound impact of climate change on forest areas. This is a huge part of the livelihood of very underprivileged people who do not have other resources, or this loss of livelihood represents a huge loss for them financially, etc., and socially, and so on. And that's basically what the story was about. And I also don't like public speaking, so I shall go. Yes, I did get some support for this piece from the Keystone Foundation. I'm doing a series with them about environment and gender. I'd also like to thank the editors, Supriya and Ajay. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Mridula. Congratulations again. And the first prize in the best article category for this year goes to Aishwarya Mohanty, correspondent, the New Indian Express, for her article, Natural Disasters Take a Heavy Toll on Coastal Orissa Women's Health. May I request the head of regional delegation, Mr. Kedir Awal Omar, to hand over the trophy, please.
Hello, good evening everyone. Thank you ICRC and PII for this recognition. The article was published in the Indian Express, and currently I'm a freelance journalist, so this means a lot. This is my maiden award, and also in a year when I decided to explore the world of freelance journalism, leaving behind 4 years of full-time journalism in a print paper. The story was about how climate change amplifies gender inequalities, and that was through the lens of health. And for a month I was traveling across 6 districts of Odisha, the coastal districts of Odisha, to understand the access that women had to sanitation, to healthcare during cyclones and the rampant floodings that happen across the year. And that's when I realized that how important intersections are, because when I went ahead and I saw that women in general did not have that kind of access to toilets in the cyclone shelters. Most of them would stay back at home, while men and the kids would go and take shelters at these infrastructure available. But I also realized that amongst these women from the Dalit community had no access at all. They weren't allowed inside these cyclone shelters, so there was no question about them having access to toilets or any kind of sanitation facilities. So that's why, while climate change amplifies gender inequalities, we also must talk about the intersections at play, be it caste, be it creed, be it class. So thank you, and also a word of thanks. My entire family is here today. I am grateful that they are. Everybody flew down from different places. So thank you. Also, I would want to thank Rohan because he had been extremely cooperative and accommodative of all my queries and everything from the very start. So thank you, Rohan, and thank you, everyone. Thank you. My father flew down from MP, my mother and brother from Odisha, my husband from MP.
Before we move on to the next category, I just also wanted to mention that this also comes with a prize money. The first three prizes come with a prize money of 100,000 rupees, 70,000 and 40,000 rupees. So for the next category for photographs, we'll start with the third prize. In Best Photograph category goes to Prashant Kharote, photojournalist, Lokmat Times, for his picture, The Root Cause of Water Scarcity. May I please request Mr. Shashi Nair to hand over the camera, please.
Rohan, is it possible to show his picture on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm taking It's okay. You're showing the wrong picture. This is first prize, huh?
This is third prize. Yeah, this is take.
Yes, please. I thought you said first prize. Yes, please.
Yes, please. Thank you.
You are surprising me.
Yes, that is.
No.
फोटोग्राफर ज़्यादा बोलते नहीं है, अभी नीचे से मैं हिल रहा हूँ। आदरणीय डायस शशि नायर सर, प्रेस इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडिया चेन्नई और इंटरनेशनल कमिटी ऑफ द रेड क्रॉस दिल्ली, और ये प्रतियोगिता का विषय तज्ञ बहुत ही बढ़िया और प्रेरणादायी था। इस विषय का ताल्लुक मैंने महाराष्ट्र के नासिक जिले सुरगानापेट नामक तहसील का गर्मी और मौसम के बारे में लिया। ये फ़ोटो मुझे इस साल यह आदिवासी जनजाति लोगों का आदिवास के लिए जाने वाला पेट तालुका में घूमते हुए मिला। पेट सुरगाना की बात ऐसी है जो बारिश के मौसम में बहुत ही भारी वर्षा होती है। पहाड़ी इलाका होने के वजह से वर्षा जितनी तेज़ी से होती है उतनी ही तेज़ी से पानी नदी नालों से बहता है। वहाँ की ज़मीन और मिट्टी में पानी पकड़कर रहने की कुव्वत बहुत ही कम है और मिट्टी पानी से साथ ढलान वजन से बह जाती है। बदलते दिनों में साथ वहाँ के वृक्ष संपदा भी तेज़ी से घटती जा रही है। मैं प्रेस फोटोग्राफर होने के
नाते हर साल धूप और बारिश में मौसम में सुरगाना तहसील और पेट तहसील का दौरा अवश्य करता हूँ। पिछले कई सालों से मैंने यहाँ के बदलाव को देखा है, समझा और कैमरे में कैद किया है। सह्याद्री सातपुड़ा संपूर्ण पूर्व श्रृंखला के गोद में बसा हुआ यह आदिवासी तहसील महाराष्ट्र गुजरात की सीमा पे पड़ा हुआ है। यहाँ बारिश के 4 महीने में छोड़ दिए जाए तो अन्य 8 माह में पीने का पानी के लिए आदिवासी जनजाति के गरीब लोगों का तहसील जाने के वहाँ विकास कब और कैसे होगा, यह सवाल मेरे मन में हर बार आता है। हवामान और प्रकृति के बदलाव के सचमुच मानव जाति के लिए ये एक बड़ा संकट बना है। ये 2 शब्द करके कह के मैंने फिर से ICIC और प्रेस इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडिया इनका धन्यवाद करके मेरा पूर्ण विराम करता हूँ।
थैंक यू प्रशांत जी, आपने पूरे आपके प्रोसेस के बारे में जो बताया उसी पे पूरा डिस्कशन भी चल रहा था. सो इन अ वे ही इज एक्सप्लेन दैट वन पिक्चर व्हाट इट इन्वॉल्व्ड इन टर्म्स ऑफ द टाइम ही स्पेंट ऑन द ग्राउंड, एंड इट्स अ लार्ज पार्ट ऑफ द डिस्कशन दैट वी वर हैविंग वाज एक्चुअली अराउंड दैट. सो थैंक यू सो मच फॉर शेयरिंग दैट. The second prize in the best photograph category goes to B. Murali Krishnan, Chief Photographer Mathrubhumi, for his picture taken by the current. May I please request Professor Malika Gudipati to hand over the trophy to him, please.
Come in center. Come in center. Come in center. Center. Yeah, that's it. Today you are center of attention. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for choosing me for this award. You know, I am coming from Kerala. Kerala is facing a lot of flood and all these climate changing problems. I took this picture from Kochi, Chellana. There is a very big problem they are facing because of the rise in the sea level, water level and all that. And I am doing a photo story about that. And this award is a great inspiration for me. Thank you very much.
And now for the first prize in the best photograph category goes to Deepu BP, Principal News Photographer, the New Indian Express, for his picture Between Sea and Peril. May I please request Mr. R. Prasannan to hand over the trophy to him, please.
Center. Okay.
That's all that's left of a house on the edge of the sea.
Amazing picture. Amazing. Say something. Where you took it? When you
Good evening, all of you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am coming from Kerala, Trivandrum. This picture, my English language is very bad, but my language, I think my language is visual. That's okay. Visual language.
It speaks volume.
This is my native place, Anjutangu. I took this picture. Is Anjutangu, the coastal village. The coastal. मैंने मेरा बचपन से देखा था एक कोस्टल विलेज का पीपल नहीं था वो मेरा पीपल और माय पीपल they are suffering lot every year washed away the house and place. That's very sad thing about me or my people. Thank you very much.
As we mentioned earlier, we received excellent entries, and so we also have special mentions in the categories. The first special mention prize for best article goes to C.B. Arasu, freelance journalist, for his article "Climate Change is Forcing Indians to Migrate Far from Home" for Mint Lounge. Are you in the room with us? No, C.B. is not here. The second special mention prize for best article goes to A.K. Srijit, staff correspondent, for his article "One Only Has to Come to Pulpalli in Wayanad to See How Climate Change Has Devastated a Migrant Farming Village Economy and Economically and Socially" for Mathrubhumi Daily. Is A.K. Srijit in the room with us? So can we ask Murli to take the prize, the certificate on his behalf, please, and I'd request Dineshji if you could give up the. This is the second one in the special mention category for A.K. Srijit. Thank you so much. The third special mention prize for best article goes to Ishan Kukreti, freelance journalist, for his article "How Climate Change is Making India's Big Dams Dangerous for Scroll." Is Ishan Kukreti in the room with us? The special mention categories for best photograph. The first special mention goes to Sathi Yasilan, freelance photographer, Lokmat Times, for his picture "A Group of Corporation Workers Delivering Food to the People Affected by Flood During the Northeast Monsoon in Chennai." Is Sathi Yasilan in the room with us? The second special mention prize for best photograph goes to E.V. Ragesh, chief news photographer, Mathrubhumi, for his picture "Death Rain." E.V. Ragesh is in the room. Professor Malika, could I ask you to give it away, please? Thank you. And the third special mention prize for best photograph goes to Vishnu Nair, senior photographer, Malayalam Manorama, for his picture "Pour It Into the Well First." Is Vishnu Nair in the room with us? No. So with that, we come to the end of the award ceremony. Rohan, over to you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I congratulate all of the winners and thank all of you for being here this evening. Now I welcome you to please join us for dinner and drinks outside. Thank you so much.